In this video, we are going to talk about the top 10 ancient Greek philosophers. So before starting, please like this video and subscribe to this channel for future updates. When it comes to interpreting the world around them in ancient times, individuals had a deep belief in magic and mythology. The existence of a higher deity had a big impact on how people saw the universe. The ancient Greek philosophers introduced a novel perspective to our modern philosophical worldview. They deviated from the mythical explanations of the past and pursued an interpretation based mostly on logic and evidence. A variety of philosophers flourished in ancient Greece. Among them, a handful of major people in philosophy stood out for their seminal work and ideas. Their esoteric philosophical thoughts on primordial natural science, as well as the ethical application of their philosophical beliefs in society, garnered them worldwide acclaim. The top 10 most influential ancient Greek philosophers are as follows. Number 10. Parmenides, 560 BC to 510 BC. Parmenides was a noted follower of Pythagoras. Another well-known person in ancient Greece's mental model. Most historians assume he was a student of Xenophanes, as his poetry and ideas were significantly influenced by him. He is recognized as a major pre-Socratic philosopher, those who rose to prominence before the period of Socrates. A poem titled On Nature, his lone known work, aims to address the most pressing subject. His attempt to answer this philosophical dilemma, some could call it a rhetorical inquiry, gets a fairly paradoxical conclusion. In order to be arbitrary, Parmenides says that anything that is must be eternal. As a result, it is impossible to conceive what is not, yet difficult to imagine what cannot be imagined. Others tried to simplify the philosophical impossibilities. Number 9. Anaxagoras, 500 BC to 428 BC. Anaxagoras of Clazomenae, another prominent pre-Socratic thinker, was a famous philosopher and scientist who lived and taught in Athens for about 30 years. His philosophical beliefs were centered on nature. His theories clashed and collided with prevailing ideals and beliefs, as they did with the majority of philosophers in ancient Greece, putting his life in jeopardy. Anaxagoras is recognized as being the first to construct a complete philosophy in Athens, where it would achieve its pinnacle and have a lasting effect on society for hundreds of years. He spent a lot of time trying to explain nature as it is, treating the cosmos as an undifferentiated mass that needed to be worked on by a spiritual component he termed nous, which means mind. He felt that everything in the physical world held a piece of everything else. Everything was mixed together in disorder, and nothing was pure on its own. The application of nous gives this chaos a sense of momentum and meaning. Number 8. Anaximander, 610 BC to 546 BC. Anaximander of Miletus is a famous Thales disciple and intellectual successor. He is the first known philosopher, having written the first extant lyrics of Western philosophy. He is well known in early biology and geography. He was the first speculative astronomer, proposing the first global picture of an open cosmos, moving away from the closed universe notion. He elaborated on his master's intellectual convictions by proposing a arche, or principle. He regarded the universe basis. Unlike Thales, he believed this foundation included a pyrrhon, infinite essence, that governed all. This source focused polar opposites like heat, cold, light, and darkness. Many of his works have been condensed, especially by later philosophers. Nonetheless, he was a brilliant Greek intellectual. Number 7. Empedocles, 490 BC to 430 BC. Empedocles was one of the most significant thinkers of the pre-Socratic age, and his poetry, which influenced subsequent poets such as Lucretius, were particularly noteworthy. His claim of the four-element theory of matter is one of his philosophical milestones. All matter is made up of four main elements: earth, air, fire, and water, according to this theory. Although some historians consider it as a complicated attempt to refute Parmenides' non-dualism argument, it became one of the early hypotheses in particle physics. He simply denied the existence of any emptiness or empty space, thereby directly contradicting Parmenides' intellectual beliefs. He proposed the concept of opposing motive forces at work in the creation of the universe, such as love as the source of unity and contention as the cause of separation. He went on to become the first person to provide an evolutionary account of species evolution. Number 6. Zeno, 490 BC to 430 BC. Zeno of Elea was devoted his time to clarifying the various difficulties and paradoxes of motion and plurality at a period when other philosophers in ancient Greece were employing reason and knowledge to interpret nature. It's worth mentioning that he sought to explain the physical world's conflicting results many years before logic was developed. Zeno extended and defended Parmenides' philosophical views, which were at the time receiving a lot of hostility from the general public. He proposed a number of paradoxes that were disputed by subsequent generations of philosophers. The bulk of current arguments centered on the infinite division of time and space, such as if there is a distance, there is also half that distance, and so on. Zeno was the first philosopher to demonstrate the existence of the idea of infinity. Number 5. Pythagoras, 570 BC to 495 BC. Pythagoras, another pre-Socratic Greek philosopher, is more renowned for his mathematical theories and ideas than for his philosophical ones. In reality, he is best known for the theorem named after him in geometry. Although he is one of the most well-known names in pre-Socratic culture, we know very little about him. He is recognized with establishing a philosophical school with a large following. Pythagoras attempted to achieve a reciprocal equilibrium between actual life and the practical components of philosophy at this school. His teachings were not limited to what we now call philosophy, but also encompassed topics such as life guidelines, what to eat on a daily basis, and so on. He saw the universe as being in perfect harmony, and his teachings were focused on how to live a harmonious existence. Number 4. Socrates, 469 BC to 399 BC. Socrates pioneered a whole new way of reaching practical outcomes through the application of philosophy in our daily lives, which was mainly lacking in pre-Socratic philosophy's approach. He openly stepped away from the endless scientific hypotheses that previous philosophers had been so preoccupied deciphering and digesting, instead attempting to construct an ethical framework based on human reasoning rather than numerous, and sometimes contentious, religious ideas. Rather than regurgitating concepts based entirely on his personal perceptions, he would interrogate individuals about their views and try to define virtues by interacting with anybody claiming to possess them. Socrates rose to prominence and gathered a large following, but he also attracted a large number of foes. His convictions and pragmatic approach to philosophy eventually led to his execution. However, it may be said that it was his intellectual martyrdom, rather than anything else, that made him the famous figure that he is today. Number 3. Plato, 427 BC to 347 BC. Plato was a pupil of Socrates and was clearly affected by his master's intellectual outlook. Plato merged the two fundamental methods of pre-Socratic metaphysics and natural theology with Socratic ethical theology, whereas Socrates was preoccupied with interpreting philosophy based on human reasoning. Plato's philosophy is built on three pillars: dialectics, ethics, and physics, with the theory of forms serving as the fundamental point of unification. The ultimate form for him was that of good, which he saw as the source of existence and knowing. He shared many Pythagorean viewpoints on physics. The Republic, in particular, combines diverse components of ethics, political philosophy, and metaphysics into a coherent, relevant, and useful philosophy. Number 2. Aristotle, 384 BC to 322 BC. Among Plato's students, Aristotle of Stagira was the most influential. His perception of events was more based on facts learned through people's life experiences, as opposed to his master's preference for a perspective that was beyond the reach of the physical senses. He showed to be a creative writer, as well as a polymath, progressively rewriting pre-existing conceptions in practically every field of knowledge he came across. He divided human knowledge into discrete categories like as ethics, biology, mathematics, and physics at a period when human understanding was still far too generalist a categorization pattern that is still employed today. Aristotle was a pivotal person in ancient Greek philosophy, whose influence extended well beyond ancient Greece's borders. Number 1. Thales of Miletus, 620 BC to 546 BC. The top slot on this list goes to Thales of Miletus, who represents a critical juncture in ancient Greek philosophy from which generations of prominent thinkers, theorists, dialectics, metaphysicists, and philosophers sprang. Historians consider him to be the father of ancient Greek philosophy. The majority of Thales' views are derived from Aristotle, who credits Thales with being the first to examine fundamental concepts like the genesis of matter. Thales is also credited as being the founder of the natural philosophy school. Thales was a philosopher who seldom limited his studies to the current state of knowledge, and was actively engaged in comprehending different parts of knowledge, such as philosophy, mathematics, science, and geography as a philosopher. He's also supposed to have created well-defined criteria for explaining why things change. He proposed water as the world's most fundamental component. Thales was highly regarded by the ancient Greeks, and his speculations frequently gave depth and significance to previously held beliefs about nature. Who is your favorite Greek philosopher? Let us know in the comment box below. Please like this video and subscribe to this channel for our future updates. Thank you.